The Fairy Queen's Ring. On the night of Beltane, 3 sisters stood in the garden beside a great cauldron where a green brew was boiling. The apple trees melted into the mist. Somewhere in the distance came the voices and laughter of those celebrating, while the sisters stirred the potion and whispered the words of an ancient spell. "I want to marry a rich man," Jenna cried, tossing a sprig of rosemary into the cauldron, "and never want for anything again." "And I want to marry a mighty warrior," Iona said, lifting her eyes to the dark sky as she threw in a sprig of vervain. "Let him find me and carry me far, far away." "And I," Brianna said, so softly that her sisters barely heard her. She was the youngest of the 3. "I would wed the mist." She said nothing more, only dropped a heather blossom into the cauldron. Her sisters exchanged astonished glances. At that very moment, the brew began to seethe even more fiercely. A green smoke rose above it, so thick that the sisters coughed and stepped back. For one fleeting instant, Brianna thought she saw a man's face appear through the smoke and smile at her. But whether it was truly there, she could not tell. Suddenly, she felt a light tickle on the ring finger of her right hand. Brianna lowered her eyes, and in the firelight she saw a ring upon her finger. It looked as though it had been woven from silken grasses, and at its very center a tiny jewel gleamed like a drop of dew. Brianna slipped her hand into her pocket. Her sisters noticed nothing, they only laughed. "What a strange wish!" Brianna had always been a strange one. She would stand for hours beside the misty lake, gazing into the dark surface of the water. Or she would hum melodies while she worked, tunes no one had ever heard before. And when she walked near the crossroads of the forest paths, she would glance around as though searching for someone. But after the ride, she seemed stranger still, quieter, more thoughtful. That very night, Brianna dreamed that she had turned into a white cat and wandering for a long time through a misty forest, sniffing the air as if seeking something. Then she lifted her muzzle and in an instant became a white raven soaring high into the sky. For a long while she circled about the trees. And when dawn was drawing near, Brianna flew over the lake, plunged sharply downwards, and splashed into it as a fish, her white scales gleaming in the morning mist. All the while she heard a voice whispering, "The ring, find the ring." When Brianna awoke, she found that the ring was still upon her finger. She wondered what the voice could possibly want from her. The sisters were not wealthy. Their parents had died long ago, and the girls had to keep house, spin thread, sew clothes, and sell what they made in order to feed themselves. Yet each of them dreamed of a better fate, and that summer fortune smiled upon Jenna. She was selling shirts and dresses she had sewn at the fair when the royal treasurer rode past. He saw her and fell in love with her at once. And so Jenna became the wife of the richest man in all those lands. Lemmus was drawing near when happiness found Iona as well. An army was passing through their kingdom. A mighty warrior stopped by the gate of the sisters' house and asked for water. Iona brought him a jug. The moment the warrior saw her, he fell in love and carried her away with him to distant lands. But Brianna kept gazing into the mist, waiting for something. In her dreams she ran, flew and swam, trying to catch someone or something. And still the voice rang in her ears. "Find the ring." "But I already have it!" Brianna would cry, walking and stroking the ring upon her finger. After Mabon, the wind grew colder and the mists grew thicker. Brianna often wandered through the forest, and one day she stopped before a circle of mushrooms. It seemed to her that green sparks were flickering inside it, and that she could hear a thin silvery laughter. And then she understood. So what is what the ring means? Indeed, the circle looked like a ring, broad, even, and perfect. Without another thought, Brianna leaped into the fairy ring. The forest changed at once. The leaves of the trees grew brighter, the grass richer, the air fresher. And yet, everything seemed slightly blurred, without clear edges, as though a soft, barely visible mist lay over all things. Brianna took one step, and at once a beautiful man appeared before her. His hair was the color of raven's wing, and his steel grey eyes were veiled with mist. He took her hand. "You have done it," he said. "You found the passage. I am Nuada, king of mists, and now I shall name you my bride." He led her through the forest to a glade surrounded by oaks. The music of flutes and harps filled the air, and beautiful young men and maidens walked everywhere, dressed in fine garments. Their clothes were silken, and their ornaments looked like strange, delicate weavings of leaves and flowers. When they saw Nuada with Brianna at his side, all fell silent in astonishment. Then a whisper passed through the crowd. "The queen's ring! She wears the queen's ring!" The whisper quickly swelled into an indignant murmur. "What nonsense! It is impossible! A mortal cannot be our queen!" Brianna and her bridegroom were immediately surrounded in a tight circle. Fine ladies in splendid gowns looked upon the girl with mocking smiles, not troubling to lower their voices as they spoke of her. "She is not even beautiful. Hair like straw, freckles on her face. What could he possibly see in her?" Nuada sharply lifted his hands. A wind rose, tearing leaves from the trees and sending them whirling through the air. The music fell silent. A thick grey mist wrapped itself around the glade. Everyone stepped back in fear. "Does anyone else wish to speak?" The strong voice of the King of Mists rolled across the glade like a storm, and almost everyone present drew their heads down into their shoulders. But then a tall woman in a red gown stepped forward calmly. Her golden braids were arranged like a crown at the back of her head. She looked at Nuada with hidey eyes. "You cannot simply bring a mortal here and declare her queen," she said. "Not even you. She must pass the trials." Nuada frowned and seemed about to speak, but Brianna, to her own surprise, said loudly, "I am ready." A pleased smile appeared on the woman's face. "Very well then, the first trial." The lady in red flicked her hand, and a glittering dragonfly flew out from her sleeve. Scattering golden dust, it darted up into the air. "Catch it!" For several seconds, Brianna stared in confusion as the dragonfly rose higher and higher. But then she remembered something and turned the ring upon her finger. In that very instant, Brianna became a white raven and shot upward after the dragonfly, beating her wings. The ring grew smaller with her, yet remained upon her claw. Below, the whispering continued. The lady in red watched the sky with a thoughtful gaze. Brianna plunged into the thick leaves of an oak, caught the dragonfly in her beak, then swept downward and placed it upon the lady's outstretched palm. After that, she moved her claw and at once became a girl again. "Not bad," said the lady. From her voice, it was impossible to tell whether she was pleased or not. "Now, catch this." A silver lizard sprang from her sleeve and vanished into the grass like lightning. Brianna did not hesitate. Once more she turned the ring and became a white cat. Growling, she raced after the lizard, but it slipped into a thicket of blackthorn. The cat plunged in after it. The lady in red moved her fingers almost imperceptibly, and the blackthorn thicket grew denser still. It was hard for the cat to force her way through. The thorns scratched her. She jerked one paw back sharply from the pain, and the silken ring slipped from one claw to her. But in her pursuit of the lizard, she did not notice. At last, the cat managed to catch her prey between her teeth. But then she saw that mist had swallowed everything around her, and where she was to go in that mist, She did not know. She wanted to turn the ring and become a girl again, to look around from above, but then she discovered that the ring was gone, and she could not return to her former shape. And so the wounded cat wandered through the mist, holding the lizard tightly between her teeth. How long she wandered, no one knows. To the cat herself it seemed that an eternity had passed. She forgot who she was and what her name had been. Then one day she heard the scent of herbs, thick and strong, and followed it. And so the cat came to the door of a ramshackle hut. She stepped inside cautiously and saw an old woman stirring a potion in a great cauldron with a dry crooked stick.
"I see you have lost your way,"
the old woman rasped without turning around.
"Come then, look into the cauldron. It will show you the truth. Perhaps you are her?"
The cat looked into the murky brew, and at once an image appeared within it. A young woman dressed in rich garments and jewels, but there was no happiness in her. Everyone envied her husband, the royal treasurer, and envied her as well. They wished to kill them both. She lived in constant fear. The cat shook her head. No, that was not her. The old woman stirred the brew with her stick.
"Then perhaps this is you."
The cat saw a grieving widow dressed in black. Her husband, a mighty warrior who could not live without battle, had lately been slain in war. And now she was alone. Again the cat shook her head. No, that was not her either. The old woman smiled crookedly and stirred the brew once more. And then the cat saw a glade and a feast upon it. At the very center stood two figures, a tall, beautiful man whose eyes were like mist, and a maiden with white hair. Both were clothed in green. Beside them stood the tall lady in red, her braids arranged like a crown. She had just drawn out of a silken rose-colored ribbon, ready to bind the outstretched hands of the bride and bridegroom together. And then the cat knew him. No other, her bridegroom. But why was he with another?
"The cauldron will show you the truth,"
came the old woman's voice again,
"if you are not afraid of the heat."
But the cat was not afraid at all. She sprang forward and leaped straight into the bubbling cauldron. For one instant, terrible pain burned through her whole body. She struggled for a long time and nearly drowned in the boiling water, until at last she changed into a fish with shining white scales. The fish rose to the surface and leaped out straight onto the glade. And there at once she became a maiden in a white dress with light brown hair and silken rose-colored ribbons woven through it. In her hands she held the silver lizard. "Nuada!" she cried at the very moment when the ribbon was about to touch the hands of the man and the maiden.
"It is me, Brianna, your bride!"
Every gaze in the glade turned to her. Whispers arose here and there among the fairies, but now there was fear in them and respect. She came out of Caridwen's cauldron. She caught the lizard. She endured the blazing heat. She is the true queen of fairies. Nuada turned to her, and at once he knew his promised bride. He released the other maiden's hand and came to Brianna. Beside them the lady in red appeared. She nodded with satisfaction. "Yes," she said, "now you have passed all the trials." And she bound their hands together with the silken ribbon. Mist began to coil around them. And upon Brianna's finger the same ring appeared once more, the ring woven, it seemed, from silken grasses. "You have a spirit that reaches high," came the lady's voice from within the mist. "Teeth and claws sharp enough to seize your own happiness, wisdom enough to swim through the unknown, and courage enough to endure even unbearable fire. You are worthy to be one of us, the Queen of Fairies." Thank you for listening and subscribe for more tales.